Well, good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Tom Schlueter with today's Tom's Take. Oh my goodness. I wouldn't have thought at 73 and a half years of age that I would have the sense or the smarts to climb a mountain. But I did it. I shared with you last week that one of the things the Lord had been putting on my heart for many years as part of one of my bucket lists was to get to the highest point in the state of Texas, which is Guadalupe Mountains National Park, Guadalupe Peak. It's about 8,900, 8,700. I don't have the figures in front of me right now. It's not the highest mountain in the Rockies, but it's the highest mountain in Texas. Well, my brother-in-law, Terry, several months ago said, Tom, I think we need to climb that mountain. And I spent many hours praying about it and thinking this is not the smartest thing to do at my age. This is not the wisest thing. But then my son got involved with it, Josh. And so it looked like that's what was going to happen. And so a lot of walking took place, especially last week, to get ready for this. Well, walking on flat streets in Texas, at Arlington, Texas, even if it's 3 or 4 miles a day, is not the same of climbing up a path or a trail on a mountain. Nowhere close. Then I'll have to share that when we got on this so-called trail of the mountain, it was not what you would typically find in a National Park Service as a trail made ready for hikers. It was rough. It had high steps, and if it didn't have steps, it had high rocks. And the gravel was not gravel. It was larger rocks or smaller rocks that would shift under your feet. And so it was a very hard trip. We started at 6:30 yesterday morning, yesterday morning, Monday. I got my days all mixed up here. On Monday morning, we started at 6:30 in the morning. It was dark. As we started up the mountain, of course, we were fresh. And as we were making our way up, the sun started bringing its beautiful glow to the day, and we caught some beautiful sunsets, beautiful pictures as we made our way up. But again, I'm 73 and a half years old, and I basically told the guys, I said, they say that this trip will take 6 to 8 hours. So we're not in a hurry. And they said, no, we're not going to take this in a hurry. I was 73 and a half. My brother-in-law is, let me see, he's about ready to turn. I think he's turned 68. And then 40s are the son-in-law and my son. And they just said, as many times as you need to stop. So there were quite a few stops. And we had our trekking sticks, and we made our way up. We had well supplied ourselves with water. We were doing everything that we're supposed to do. But little did we know how hard this was going to be. It was beautiful. It was a great fellowship. It was great to do it with my family. And it took us about 7 hours just to make it to the top. On the way up, traversing over rocky paths and over outcroppings, and going switchback after switchback after switchback, we finally made it. And we got to close to the top, and I was worn out, totally worn out. My body was saying, what in the world do you think you're doing? But I continued going up. They said, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. Well, about 30, 45 minutes before we got to the top, I was already praying and talking to my son, and he was already looking at me and said, Dad, we're going to play this smart here. If you don't think you can do it, we're not going to hold you to this. And I said, well, I'm praying about it. I'm thinking about it. About that time, I was looking down at the trail as we were walking along it, and I saw a really unique rock. It was about so big, and it had 3 holes in it. It wasn't all the way through, just 3 divots in this rock. And I felt like the Lord said, pay attention to that rock. Now, I wasn't about ready to pick it up because I didn't need any extra weight at all. but I paid attention to it. It wasn't much longer. We had reached a place where people were saying, hey, it's 15 minutes now to the summit. And I said, I need to sit down and rest. And so I sat down on a rock. And as I sat there, the Lord just said, Tom, this is okay. And this peace welled over me. And I called my son. I called the other guys. They had gone up the trail about 10 feet. And I called them back and I said, guys, this is as far as I'm going right here. Now, it was already like 8,600 feet elevation. So I was about 200 feet elevation below the top, the pinnacle. And I could actually see the kind of a pyramid structure that they have at the top. I could see it very clearly. It was right there. And people kept on saying it's about 15 minutes up. And I said, I don't think it's going to be 15 minutes for me. So I said, I want y'all just to go as a proxy for me. I'm going to sit here and rest. As I rested, I almost fell asleep on that rock. And it didn't take them long. They got back in about 30 minutes. I could hear them talking even up on the top of the peak. They got back down and they said, Tom, your wisest move today was sitting right here. You wouldn't have made it. The next 15 minutes was the most treacherous of all. It was hard to navigate, and at one point they had to spider themselves along a wall to get up to the peak. And I just said, I'm peaceful about where I am right now. Well, before they had actually returned, I had peace in my heart. God was just welling over me with grace and peace. And he said, you are where you need to be, Tom. You're at the highest point you've ever been in the state of Texas. And I began to just speak blessings over the land. I had always desired to vow it, and I did. I vowed it with my presence. Now, I had brought along a Appeal to Heaven flag, a Texas flag, and a Texas A&M flag, just little ones. But my son Josh had those, and so he went up and took those up to the very top. But as I was sitting there, the Lord brought back to my mind the rock with the 3 holes. And he said, Tom, I showed that to you because it's going to be those 3 that carry the flags, the 3 flags to the top. And it's all good. He just welled over me with a satisfaction and a joy that just overcame all of the weaknesses I was experiencing. Because see, part of the weakness of getting to that point was we had just gone a little over 4 miles up this mountain. It had taken us 7 hours to get there. We had to go back down this mountain, that little over 4 miles. Matter of fact, at the end, my reader on my pedometer actually said 10 miles. And we had also gone up 180 floors. Just imagine one of the tallest buildings in the nation and climbing 180 floors. So as I sat there, I waited for them. They came back. I poised a picture with this Appeal to Heaven flag and the A&M flag, and I just was bubbling over with joy until we had to start walking back down. And it was a hard walk. Even though it went faster by a couple hours, it still was the same pattern of going over those rocks, those outcroppings, and everything else to make it to the top. Oh, and I forgot something. Several times along the way, they always warn you of the winds at Guadalupe Peak. Well, the winds were 40 to 50 miles an hour. They hit us about 3 or 4 times going up. And you could almost feel like you were going to be knocked off the mountain. The weather was beautiful. The temperature was perfect. The skies were blue. It was the most enjoyable trip as far as looking at God's creation. Most beautiful trip, enjoying it with my son, my son-in-law, and my brother-in-law. But when we got back down to the bottom, it had been a 12-hour hike. And everybody was dead sore. Matter of fact, we were talking about it. We had gotten back here and got back in time to watch my granddaughter and her volleyball team make the playoffs in their school. And as I was sitting there, my daughter looked at me and said, "Well, are you dead?" I'm sorry, the line from Princess Bride came up to me. No, I'm just mostly dead. I think I'll be revived. And I'm sorry, that's the way I feel right now. I'm not going to hop up really fast here. My muscles are all saying, what in the world were you thinking? But we did it. Mission accomplished. Thank you for all the prayers. One of the first texts that I sent out after I had taken that picture with the Appeal to Heaven flag was to Dutch and Greg and Clay, saying, mission accomplished. And Dutch was very complimentary. Of course, as he listens to this, he'll know that I didn't make the last 200 feet up. But if I had, they probably would have had to just parachute my body off the top, because I would have probably not been mostly dead. I would have been dead. Probably not. But I still am full of joy. What a wonderful experience. But I've made a decision. No more mountains. I'm going to stay level ground. Matter of fact, my brother-in-law was kidding with me. He says, hey, are you ready to do Big Bend and some of the tall mountains there? And I said, sure, I'll go to Big Bend with you. You want to climb? And I said, no, I'll sit down in your truck and you can be my proxy as you go all the way up by yourself. But I'll go to Big Bend if I want to look at the scenery and go to the river. But I'm not going up any more mountains. I've finished with that task. I can check off that bucket list. What a joy it is when you can finish something that God has put on your heart to do. I am not at all feeling bad that I didn't get the last 200 feet, because the next generation, I'm hoping you're hearing this, the next generation took the baton and finished the race. Thank you, Josh and Tim and Uncle Terry, for finishing the race, because that's what this is all about. It's about passing on to the next generation, walking with them, climbing with them, struggling with them, sucking water as much as you can, fighting 40-mile-an-hour winds on a cliff, and then seeing the joy of them hiking up those last 15 minutes and being able to show the world that the appeal to heaven still works. Thank you so much for your prayers again. I will be with you again tomorrow, and hopefully I'll have a little bit of my mostly dead body alive. I love y'all so very much. Blessings to you. Bye-bye.